back, folks. Every time you talk to AI, there's a physical world behind it you never see. Concrete, copper, water, and a small army of people keeping it alive. Most of us never think about it for a second, but my guest today has spent over 25 years thinking about almost nothing else. In particular, when it comes to the future of data centers, he's been asking it in boardrooms, on stages from Sydney to New York City. And his nonprofit, the Nomad Futurist Foundation, was built on the philosophy that the digital revolution belongs to everyone. Nabeel Mahmood, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
So look, this is an interesting topic. We tend to talk a lot about the bits and bytes and the speeds and feeds of AI. Today, we're going to talk a lot more about the human aspect of AI and some of the far-reaching elements of this new technology that we don't spend a lot of time digging into. At the end of the day, this is not about chips. This is about people that actually keep this running. I guess, as you've put it, behind every AI model is a data center, and behind every data center is a grid, and behind every grid is chemistry and controls. What's the mistake? Like, what's really happening here? Why are we focused so much on the technology and we're not really thinking about the human aspect of all of this?
Well, I think you summed it up well. Behind all of it is actually human and human intelligence. There's no substitute for that. What's happening and why it's happening is because it's all monetization. That's the story. It's not about bits and bytes of computing. It's the dollars and cents that's driving that behavior, that we're not really focusing on the core elements, whether it be human, the physical layer of compute, the infrastructure layer itself. It's all about how many bits and bytes of compute can we produce and how can we tokenize that and make money off of it.
So when you say that it's really about the people, right? That it's not about the bits and bytes, it's about the people and it's about the impact on our lives. What does that really mean on the ground? What does that really mean to you? And obviously this is very deeply convicted to you. So help us understand why you've spent so much of your time focusing on this side of the equation.
I believe that there's no substitute for human intelligence. Okay. What we are doing and what we have done thus far is to improve the quality of humanity. Life has certainly changed, and it's been changed by humanity and human, not by compute. Compute for us and the bits and bytes of compute thereon really are a tool. Now, why have I been talking about this? There is this push that robots are going to overtake the world. There is this push that humanity is going to dissipate. Okay. There is this push that we are killing jobs and careers. And that's not true. The fact of the matter is, where we're at today is because of the human brain. And where we're going to end up tomorrow is because of the human brain. It's not because of AI. It's not self-healing, self-growing. It's what we are asking it to do. What worries me is that with this negative persona, it is basically emasculating. Gosh, that's probably a very strong word for it, but it is not encouraging the human race to move along and keep up. That we feel that it's coming to an end. All of this is coming to an end, and that's not the case. I believe in some of the research. As a matter of fact, Korn Ferry actually recently published a research paper that by 2030, there's 86 million jobs across the world that need to be fulfilled. Yet the media pundits continually push the fact that, there are not going to be any jobs because of AI.
Yeah, I love where you're going with this. I mean, ultimately, if humanity itself puts up the shield to drive this forward, seeing it as a threat, and I think we all know, Nabeel, that the number one motivator of anything among the human race is fear. It's not money, it's not greed, it's not power, it's fear.
Exactly.
And it is instilling a tremendous amount of fear that is actually holding us back from realizing this gain that we're about to jump into in this conversation. And I think it's really refreshing to see that side of it. It may not be the headline everybody wants to read about. It may not be the social post that people will click on. But I want to jump into it because along the lines of this humanization of AI, you have a pretty controversial discussion topic. We'll call it the plumber paradox,
Mm-hmm.
right? And to quote you, you said your most important asset is no longer the bits and bytes of compute, it's the plumber, arguing the build out and this build out is creating massive human demand. Now, this has actually grown a life of its own, this whole concept. You've had picketers that have said that's not the case and we don't agree. Explain this plumber paradox to our viewers. What are you talking about and what does it really mean?
Well, think about the number of jobs that we are actually creating within this AI revolution that we talk about, right? I'll give you a couple examples. Microsoft and Meta, they built their data centers in Prineville and Wenatchee, Washington. Okay, those were cow towns. Those cow towns had more cattle there than they ever did any human. And now you go into those cities. Now, as a matter of fact, they are cities now, and they're the state of the art cities. Like they're modern, right? So when data centers went out there, they built core infrastructures. They built roads and byways. They provided connectivity. They cleaned out water. They built animal shelters. They provided quality of life that did not exist in those cities before. So yeah, I mean, we are building other careers along the way as well. So part of what I believe in is that the whole media piece of this has not done a fair job for the sector. It's not done justice to us. They think that we are eliminating jobs. We go in and we don't create opportunities, and that's not true. Going back to the statement that I made earlier about 86 million jobs or resources needed by the year in 2030 is 100% true, because we are entering into a phase where a different set of skill sets are needed. So we need metal fabricators. We need people that can build chillers and air conditioners and air handlers and electrical, mechanical equipment, and servers and so on and so forth. So it's not that data centers or technology is evil, but there's this human piece and human opportunities that are coming into this space that no one's really talking about. A good example would be for people, from the other side of the pond. There used to be a person known as a town whisperer. The town whisperer used to walk around the neighborhoods and tell you what was happening in the city or the neighborhood. Okay. Well, now everybody is a town whisperer. So now going back to the plumber being the most important person, Jensen Huang recently made a statement. It's not about the chips. The next millionaires are going to be plumbers. So the hard trades are where the specialties are. To further expand on that, when I started my career in the data center space, we used to actually build compute capacities at 1.5 kilowatts of rack density in an 8 square foot form factor. At the last GTC, Jensen Huang wanted to introduce a 1.5 megawatt rack. That's 100 times more than where we were 20 years ago. So what does that mean? It's not about the compute density. Your most important asset is the one that's supposed to be making sure that we can actually have the right thermal management and piping within that 8 square foot form factor, because downtime now has become the most critical element in ensuring that data is available at your fingertips in a matter of milliseconds.
It's so funny to hear you kind of go through some of these analogies because it's really resonating with me. And you said a couple things there I really want to make sure that we highlight. So the first is you talked about the cow towns.
Mm-hmm.
And it reminded me a lot of railroads, right? It's like, think of all these towns that never had anybody coming through and never had any real sort of tourism or, whatever you want to call it. And as the railroad network expanded, these towns became cities, and these cities had more and more people, and those people represented opportunity to start businesses and build shops. And it also brought new people into the area. It sounds to me in a way that ultimately, if I go forward from that, and I even look at something like moving from horses to cars, yes, cars took away some jobs from humans, but think of all the humans that were out there building roads and worrying about getting traffic patterns, being set up. Think of law enforcement. Think of everything to do with repairing those cars, refueling those cars. I mean, the economic plus versus
Mm-hmm.
horse and buggy, at the time you would see it as so controversial, but ultimately think of everything that boomed from that: the telephone, the internet, the PC revolution. Um, am I following this right? Are you saying this is yet another
Absolutely.
leg? Okay.
Absolutely. I mean, think about it. Like you said, the horse and buggies. I mean, think about the tailors now. I mean, because of the uniforms that were going to be made. So there's a lot of impact in other verticals and other business endeavors that we will continue to touch and expand or explore.
So where I want to go then is, as a parent of three children, how well set up are we for this new era of jobs? You talked about, you talked about all these jobs being created. There's no doubt that there's new jobs ahead. But ultimately, if you are a parent with children in that generation, how good a job are we doing in terms of helping them to both mentally, physically, and otherwise prepare for this world that lies ahead?
So I've got two kids. My but both are brilliant. My son decided to go to college, did 2 semesters, and decided that wasn't the thing for him because we were teaching mediocrity at best. And he's now decided to pursue a different career, and that's aviation. Okay. But every conversation I have with him about aviation is okay, how can we understand models from weather patterns to flying and so on and so forth? And how do we enhance the quality of the travel experience? So, yeah, he is still interested in the tech space. He is still interested in AI and automation, machine learning and data, so on and so forth. But it's not necessarily in the physical layer of compute itself. It's from a UI, from a user interface and user experience perspective, and leveraging those data sets, right? My daughter, on the other hand, she was not a technologist at all, but she was born in the era where it's all about AI, right? So she doesn't know what a library is from like how we grew up, but she knows what a data library is. So she's all data driven, and she wants to understand how do we ensure that we have the right regulations, the policy, the compliance, and standardization in compute as we move forward. Now she is a 17-year-old. So where I'm going with that is that as parents, we need to do a couple of different things. One is that we need to question the educational system that we've got. And in primary countries like us, that we have not changed since the second industrial revolution. We're entering the fifth here. We need to allow children to go out and explore and learn on their own. We need to give them tools and resources so they can actually start doing their research and start finding their passion and swim lane. I was reading this piece about this young gentleman, 15-year-old who's got his PhD in computer science, and now he wants to study neurophysics and get another PhD at the age of 15. So, we have to change as a society that education is not necessarily going to go get a degree from a college. It's based on exposure, experiences, and opportunities, and we need to be open to the idea that there is that self-learning platform or that freedom that's available now that did not exist when we were growing up. However, we need to, be open to the idea that there's plenty of opportunities. There's plenty of ways that they can make money. They just need to be able to find what they're passionate about. At the core of it, if we teach them values, that's the most important thing. At the core of it, if we expose them to opportunities and the idea of innovation, they'll find their swim lane. We just have to give them, that opportunity to be flexible and nimble and the ability to learn, not the way that you and I grew up, but the way that the modern society requires.
Yeah, it's so interesting because when I listen to what you just said, I really think, okay, so the next generation is human plus machine, human working alongside the machine. And I can remember a time when you and I went to school where they said you have to learn your times tables because you can't carry a calculator everywhere you go. But the reality is we now carry a calculator everywhere we go. And we carry computers far more powerful than mainframes were in the 60s in our pocket. But the real question is, have we actually adapted our academic curriculum to, in your words, help this generation that will be quote unquote AI native to actually learn early on in their school system how to be human plus machine? Or, is this going to be the biggest handicap or sort of impediment moving into this next generation, which is we're not using the scholastic system to give them all this potential opportunity and instead forcing them through the same pipeline we had before?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we've got to let them loose. I mean, all the information is there. Let them do the thinking. Let them find their pathway.
So let me put you on the spot. So you're in charge of a group of students, a group of, let's call it first year, second year high school students, and you look at everything that's available today. What sort of exercise do you think these students need to be exposed to understand not just the potential of what lies ahead, but really start to get those creative juices flowing of like, what am I truly going to be passionate about and how am I going to make this work for me? What might that look like?
So the way we go about it is that we actually bring them out to these environments, right? We will take them out to data centers. We will take them out to software development companies. We will take them out to discrete manufacturing environments, from semiconductor to thermal management to someone that's doing metal fabrication. And those hand-on experiences are critical because that's where they find what they're passionate about or what they're interested in.
So what does hands-on look like to these students when they go out to these data centers or these facilities? I mean, try to make this as real as you can to my audience to just really understand what is it that the students are doing? What's really unlocking here?
So the first touch point really is to take them out to these facilities, to expose them what the world is behind the curtains. And it's sort of like, you can go to a car dealership. You can look at 20 cars. You'll find your favorite color. You find the favorite curves. You find your favorite steering wheel, whatever the case might be. There is always going to be that one clicking point that's going to help you, or help you steer to pick up a vehicle of your choice. And then the next follows on establishing on that experience. So it's sort of like a similar approach. Let's take them behind the scenes, show them how this all works, and then give them an opportunity to find that domain. So, for instance, most recently, we've got about 60 students that wanted to go visit Roblox. They play Roblox. Okay. It automatically appears on their screen. But let's take them to the data center where Roblox is hosted. And what they're really looking at is like, okay, do I have a similar background, similar experience, similar schooling? And then you start connecting these dots. So instead of telling them what to do, it's about sharing those experiences. And then you find what you're passionate about because you're looking at commonalities and similarities. And, who do you like? Who do you want to be? You pick up your idol, you pick up your character along the way. That, oh my gosh, that's something of interest to me. And then, once you've got that direction, that makes that learning experience much, much easier and better.
I love that. I mean, I think that experiential angle of get inside the heart of it, look at how it is running. Back in the day, it would have been taking you to an auto plant and seeing how the cars are actually manufactured and what the different stages of the manufacturing are and the design process. And right, even seeing in these days, the clay builds and the AutoCAD side of the build out. Let's shift gears a little bit. So one of the other things that you've been talking quite a bit about is the other side of it, the fragility and the power of these new systems. We're embracing them so quickly because of the value that they're bringing us and the productivity that lies ahead. But there is a fragility that lies ahead. In fact, you've predicted that when we encounter one major catastrophe within the next 18 months to 2 years, there will be significant shifts in how we deploy these applications. So tell me a little bit more about that and what the implications are for not just the build out, but the way we insure these businesses, the way we build regulations around these businesses. What do you see that lies ahead?
Well, so you you've probably heard about the CrowdStrike, the FAA failures and stuff like that. I mean, that's just the beginning of it. If you're not passionate about it, if you're just putting band-aids on things, you're not running the right patch updates, you're actually leaving loopholes that someone's going to find, someone's going to try to break, and then that starts taking systems down. That's where the challenge is. And I still believe that in the next 18 to 24 months, and I hope I'm wrong, something's going to happen. I don't know exactly what it is, but something is going to happen that we're going to have to start slowing down to regrip, get our arms around things to ensure that we've got some sort of standardization processes in place to ensure continuity. I don't know what that is.
I wonder though, Nabeel, if it gets back to what you said earlier. I wonder if it's, part of it's passion, but let's give folks the assumption that they're doing the best they can do at their job. But I wonder if we're thinking about the vectors of attack, and I wonder if we're thinking about the potential exposures in terms of what we would have thought about a decade ago or 2 decades ago, instead of what's happening now, right? You said, I hope they don't find it, right? The exposures. Well, AI is going to find it all, right?
It is, yeah.
And so it's no longer about whether or not they're going to find it. It's about what it is and what the impact of that is. And so, how do you advise companies that are thinking about this, that say, how on earth am I going to up-level my teams and my people to think about what is now possible versus what has always been possible?
Well, like you said, it's not about if, it's a matter of when. I think the way to go about really, and what I advise people is leave your ego and your bias outside the room and assume that it's going to break and try to find those gaps.
So think about the most catastrophic loss you could incur. What would have to happen for it to occur? Assume it's going to occur. And now, how would you rebuild with that thought to minimize the consequence of that failure?
Yeah, so there's a lot of points or areas of concern, like power grid, for instance. I mean, our power grid is very vulnerable. If in any of the core markets the power grid goes down, you've lost your data centers, you've lost your major application stack, you might not be able to fly the plane then. Then you've got the user security or privacy that no one's talking about, right? So, I mean, potential identity thefts being an issue as we move along. All those things need to be looked at and thought through.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking to some really, really interesting areas. I mean, it reminds me of when I think of agentic, the agentic workflows we're now seeing, where we build agents that are able to do things on our behalf. I see people writing things in Claude Code and allowing them to run unsupervised, meaning Claude Code no longer asks you whether it can do things. It just goes and does them. And I just wonder, what's the first time that one of those is going to come up where an incident happened, the human was unaware, the agent made me do it, right? I mean, using the kind of old, the devil made me do it. The agent made me do it. And it could have tremendously dire consequences.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's why you have to be, as a human, you have to be in the middle of it. You have to be in the driver's seat. You can't just let self drive itself.
I know, but here's my problem. There's one of these episodes of The Simpsons that sticks out in my head where, for those of you who may be following, Homer Simpson manages the nuclear power plant to make sure that the gas doesn't get too high pressure and then blow up the plant. And so he decides one day that he'll simplify his job by using a bird that just basically goes up and down, kind of a gyroscope type bird, to just hit the key to release the pressure. Well, it turns out that, the wind blows through the window and blows over the bird. And all of a sudden, the nuclear power plant goes into a full-on, blow-up mode. And it feels to me like it's too easy for humans to say, I'm getting so many requests to say yes. I'm saying yes every time. Why do I even need to say yes? I mean, would you agree that we just need to put some tighter controls around helping humans understand where they actually need to be involved and where they don't? Because this noise is just heading in a really bad direction.
Absolutely. Yeah, we've got to slow down to go fast, and we've got to tighten some of these the flexibility that we've given. It's all good, but if it's a little too much flex, it's going to be hurtful to the human race. So
So,
we've got to tighten things up a bit, or at least people should do it for themselves.
well, and Nabeel, let's kind of pivot there. So you've taken this so seriously that you've built your career around the thoughts that you've laid out for us today. Nomad Futurist deliberately targets communities that don't even know this industry exists. You talked about a little bit of what you're doing with students. You talked about where your thoughts are around power. Help us understand, what is Nomad Futurist doing? Tell us what you're most proud of and kind of where you're going next.
We started as a non-profit roughly about 3 years ago with the idea of demystifying technology for the masses, addressing the human capital deficit, ensuring that we're feeding the right information to the communities, that data and data centers or technology for that matter is not evil. We've experienced that through time. You do 99 good things and no one talks about it, but one mistake could be a bundle, and it could burn the forest down. So we want to make sure that we're ahead of it, that we are actually providing the right information, totally unbiased. I mean, this is for you to understand and take it for whatever it is. But don't assume that whatever the government is feeding or the media pundits are feeding is correct. Make your own decisions. What we are proud of is that we've been able to scale up globally in the last 3.5 years. We're in 6 continents. We're trying to unify the industry. We're trying to get everybody together, stop operating in silos. So that seems to be heading in the right direction. What I am personally very proud of the fact is that we've been actually able to change a few lives of people that actually never knew that there was actually ever an opportunity in this space, or this is the end of the world, sort of like, that they won't actually ever have a job, to them being able to find careers and successful careers. As much of a challenge it has been in creating an educational platform, that I would say in us launching our academy has been the biggest win thus far, whereby I've committed to it that we're going to provide a free educational resource, a free academy to anybody and everybody globally, and build those muscle memories early on in people's lives so that they can find their passion, they can find their swim lane, and they can find a career pathway.
Wow. Sounds like Nomad Futurist is definitely worth following. One final question for you, Nabeel, which I just can't, I can't wait to hear your answer. So put yourself back in your 22-year-old self. What's the one piece of advice that you would give your 22-year-old self that you are passing on to all of our listenership today?
Find your swim lane. Life is going to continually throw curveballs. Find what you're passionate about and embrace your voice. I've been very fortunate to where I'm at in my life and my career, but it's not necessarily come very easy. I had lost my voice at the age of 21 to the corporate world, which resulted in 3 heart attacks and being legally dead twice. And the day I embraced my voice again is when we started on this quest. So don't lose your voice, be true to yourself and speak your mind. Don't be afraid. Just do it. If you believe in yourself, do it.
Wow. Well, folks, there's no way to follow that. Nabeel, I sincerely appreciate your time today. Thank you so much for sharing this with us. For all of our listeners, this is definitely one to go check out, the Nomad Futurist. And Nabeel Mahmood has done all sorts of speaking around the world, so do go check out all of his content. On behalf of Nabeel and myself here at the DataWire podcast, I appreciate everybody taking the time. Please do check out thedatawire.com for more reading, and we'll see all of you very soon. Bye-bye.